You've probably heard the saying, never argue with a fool, they'll drag you down to their level and beat you with experience. But here's what nobody tells you. Most of us are losing these battles every single day without even realizing it. That coworker who always has to be right, that family member who twists everything you say, that stranger online who just won't let it go. You think you're defending yourself, you think you're standing up for truth, but you're actually handing them exactly what they want. Today, I want to show you why walking away isn't weakness. It's the smartest strategy you'll ever learn. I learned this lesson the hard way. Years ago, I got into an argument with someone at a conference. He was loud, aggressive, and completely unreasonable. And I thought, I'll show him. I'm an expert in communication. I'll win this debate with facts and logic. 5 minutes later, I was exhausted, frustrated, and angrier than when I started. He walked away smiling. I walked away drained. And nobody watching changed their mind about anything. That night I sat in my hotel room thinking, what just happened? I had better arguments, I had evidence, I had logic on my side, and none of it mattered because I'd made a fundamental mistake. I assumed every argument was worth having. I assumed every person could be reasoned with. Here's what I finally understood. Some battles aren't meant to be won. They're meant to be avoided entirely. Not because you're weak, not because you're scared, but because engaging is exactly what drags you down. The smartest people I've ever studied know which fights to walk away from. Let me explain how they do it. Let me ask you something. How many hours of your life have you wasted arguing with someone who was never going to change their mind? Really think about that. The online debates that went nowhere, the family dinners that turned into battlegrounds, the work meetings where one person derailed everything, the text arguments that went round and round in circles until everyone was exhausted. If you added up all that time, all that energy, all that emotional damage, what would it total? Weeks, months? For some of you, maybe years. And here's the painful part. What did you get from it? Did anyone say, you know what, you're right, I've completely changed my position? Did the relationship get better? Did you walk away feeling good about yourself? I didn't think so. Some of you probably know exactly the person I'm talking about in your life. Maybe it's a colleague who argues about everything, even things that don't matter. You suggest a small change and suddenly it's a 30-minute debate. Maybe it's a relative who brings up the same controversial topics at every gathering, just waiting for someone to take the bait. Maybe it's an ex who still sends messages designed to provoke you. Maybe it's a stranger on social media who commented something ridiculous and you just couldn't let it go. I've studied human behavior for decades now. I've watched thousands of arguments unfold, and here's what I can tell you with absolute certainty. Some people aren't arguing to find the truth. They're arguing to feel powerful. They're arguing for entertainment. They're arguing because conflict gives them energy, and when you engage with these people, you're not educating them, you're feeding them. Let me paint you a picture of what's actually happening in these moments. When a reasonable person argues with an unreasonable person, the reasonable person has a massive disadvantage. You're playing by rules they don't follow. You're trying to be logical with someone who doesn't care about logic. You're trying to be fair with someone who will say anything to win. You're bringing evidence to a street fight. I watched this happen to a brilliant woman at a corporate event. She was presenting data, actual research about a business decision. And this guy in the audience kept interrupting with nonsense objections, things that didn't even make sense, but he was loud and confident. She tried to address each point carefully, professionally. And the more she engaged, the worse it got. He kept moving the goalposts, changing the subject, making it personal. By the end, she looked flustered and he looked triumphant. Even though everything he said was wrong, that's what arguing with a fool does. It doesn't make you look smart. It makes you look like you're on their level. Here's what really bothers me. Good people, intelligent people get sucked into these situations because they care about truth. They care about fairness. They can't stand to let misinformation go unchallenged. They think silence equals agreement. But that instinct, that noble instinct, gets exploited because some people don't care about the truth. They care about the game, and every second you spend engaging is a second they've won. I know how this feels because I've done it so many times myself. That burning sensation when someone says something completely wrong, that compulsion to correct them, that certainty that if I just explain it clearly enough, they'll understand, but they don't want to understand. They want to argue. And there's nothing you can say that will change that. The cost of these arguments goes far beyond the time you waste. It affects your mental health. Research shows that conflict, even conflict you win, triggers stress hormones. Your body doesn't know the difference between a physical threat and someone attacking your ideas online. Same chemicals, same damage. After a heated argument, you carry that energy with you. It affects your sleep, your mood, your relationships with people who had nothing to do with it. One pointless debate with a fool can ruin your entire day. Is that worth it? Is proving a point to someone who doesn't care worth sacrificing your peace? Now here's where most people get stuck. They think walking away means the other person wins. They think silence equals surrender. They think if they don't defend their position, everyone watching will assume they were wrong. Let me challenge that thinking completely. When you argue with a fool, there are no winners. Both of you end up covered in mud. Both of you look bad. The only difference is the fool doesn't care, you do. So who really wins when you walk away? You do, because you kept your energy, you kept your peace, you kept your dignity. You didn't let someone else control your emotional state. Think of it this way. Imagine someone walks up to you on the street and challenges you to a wrestling match in a garbage pile. Do you feel like a loser for declining? Of course not. You recognize that participating would be stupid regardless of whether you won or lost. You'd still end up covered in garbage. That's what arguing with unreasonable people is. A wrestling match in garbage. Even if you pin them down, you still stink. Here's the aha moment that changed everything for me. I realized that my need to respond wasn't about the other person at all. It was about my ego. I wanted to feel smart. I wanted to feel right. I wanted the satisfaction of winning. But that need was making me easy to manipulate. Anyone who wanted my attention, my time, my energy, they could get it just by saying something provocative. I was like a puppet, and they were pulling the strings with their stupid comments. The moment I let go of my need to respond, I became free. Suddenly I was in control again. I chose what deserved my attention. I chose what was worth my energy. Nobody could bait me anymore because I stopped biting. Some of you might be thinking, but Allan, what if they're spreading misinformation? What if they're saying harmful things? Don't I have a responsibility to correct them? Look, I understand that instinct, I really do. But let me ask you this. Has arguing with them online ever changed the mind? Has getting into heated debates at family dinners ever converted anyone? Usually it just makes people dig in deeper. Here's something fascinating about human psychology. When people feel attacked, even if your attack is pure logic and facts, they become more committed to their original position. It's called the backfire effect. Your brilliant arguments actually make them believe their nonsense more strongly. So not only are you wasting your time, you're making the problem worse. You're strengthening their conviction by opposing it. The people who actually change minds do it differently. They do it through relationships, through patience, through asking questions instead of making arguments, through modeling better behavior instead of attacking bad behavior. And sometimes the most powerful statement is no statement at all. Walking away sends a message too. It says, this isn't worth my time. You aren't worth my energy. I have better things to do. That drives certain people absolutely crazy because they wanted the fight. They wanted the attention and you didn't give it to them. I remember someone trying to provoke me after a talk I gave. They were being deliberately offensive, saying ridiculous things, clearly wanting me to engage. And I just smiled, said interesting perspective, and walked away. The look on their faces was priceless. They didn't know what to do with themselves. Your silence can be more powerful than any argument you could make. All right, let's get practical. Because knowing you shouldn't argue is one thing. Actually keeping your mouth shut when someone says something infuriating is another thing entirely. First, learn to identify the fools you shouldn't argue with. Not everyone who disagrees with you is a fool. Reasonable people can have different opinions. Intelligent people can see things differently. Those conversations can be valuable, even if they get heated. The people who avoid arguing have specific characteristics. They're not listening to understand, they're listening to respond. They repeat the same points no matter what you say. They make it personal quickly. They move goalposts when you address their arguments. They seem to enjoy the conflict itself. Their body language is aggressive, arms crossed, leaning forward, voice raised. When you spot these signs, that's your cue. This isn't a discussion, this is a performance. And you don't have to be their audience. Second, have exit strategies ready. You need phrases prepared in advance because in the heat of the moment, your brain won't work properly. You'll feel that pressure to respond and you'll say something before you can stop yourself. Here are some phrases that work beautifully. I don't think we're going to agree on this, and that's okay. You might be right. This one drives arguments insane because it gives them nothing to push against. I need some time to think about what you've said. This isn't a conversation I want to have right now. Let's talk about something else. Notice what these phrases have in common. They close the door without slamming it. They don't escalate. They don't give the other person ammunition. They just end it. Practice saying these out loud. Seriously, stand in front of a mirror and practice. Because when that moment comes, you want these words to come out automatically. Third, delay your response. This is crucial, especially for online arguments. That comment that makes your blood boil. That message that seems to demand an immediate response. It doesn't. Nothing bad will happen if you wait. Give yourself a rule. I will not respond to anything provocative for at least 24 hours. Often, after a day has passed, you realize how little it matters. The urgency disappears, the anger fades, and you saved yourself from saying something you'd regret. I've typed out so many anger responses over the years and then deleted them the next morning. Every single time I was grateful I waited. Every single time. Fourth, redirect your energy. Here's the thing about arguments. They're energizing in a toxic way. That rush of adrenaline, that flood of thoughts, it feels important. Your body is telling you this matters. But that energy can go somewhere else, somewhere actually productive. When you feel that urge to argue, consciously redirect it. Go for a walk. Do something creative. Call someone you love. Work on a project that matters to you. You're not suppressing the energy. You're channeling it. Big difference. I started keeping a note on my phone of things I wanted to accomplish. And whenever I caught myself about to engage in a pointless argument, I'd look at that list instead. Is this argument more important than these goals? The answer was always no. Fifth, protect your environment. Some arguments happen because you've put yourself in argumentative environments. Certain social media platforms are designed to provoke conflict. Certain people in your life always create drama. Certain topics always lead nowhere good. You have more control over this than you think. Unfollow accounts that make you angry. Mute people who constantly bait you. Avoid topics that always lead to fights. Leave group chats that drain you. Set boundaries with people who won't respect your peace. This isn't hiding from reality. This is curating your life for your well-being. You wouldn't eat food that made you sick. Why consume content and relationships that make you miserable? What you should avoid is announcing your exit dramatically. Don't say, I'm above this conversation, or I refuse to argue with someone so ignorant. That's just another form of engagement. That's another way of taking the bait. Just leave, quietly, without explanation, without giving them anything to respond to. Avoid thinking you're the exception. You're not so logical that you can win arguments with illogical people. You're not so persuasive that you can convince the unconvincible. Your ego is lying to you. Everyone thinks they're the exception. Nobody is, and avoid keeping score. Don't track how many times you walked away versus how many times they said something stupid. Don't hold on to resentments. Let it go completely. The whole point is to free your mind from this person and this conflict. Now, let me be honest with you, because I know this is hard. Walking away feels wrong. It feels like losing. It feels like letting bad behavior go unpunished. It feels like the fool wins while you slink away in defeat. Those feelings are real. I still feel them sometimes. After decades of studying human behavior, after knowing better, I still feel that pull to engage, that urge to correct, that desire to win. The difference is I don't act on it anymore most of the time. Yes, I still fail at this. There are still moments when someone says something so outrageously wrong that I can't help myself. And every single time I regret it. Every single time I wish I'd walked away. So I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm asking you to be better, to catch yourself more often, to walk away more frequently, to waste less of your precious life on people who don't deserve your attention. Let me tell you about someone who taught me this lesson in the most unexpected way. I was at a dinner party, and there was this older gentleman who barely said a word all evening. Other people at the table were getting into heated debates about politics, religion, everything. And he just sat there eating his meal, occasionally nodding, never engaging. At one point, someone directly challenged him. You've been awfully quiet. Don't you have an opinion about any of this? And he smiled and said, well, I have opinions about many things. I just don't feel the need to defend them to people who aren't really asking. That line hit me like a truck. People who aren't really asking. Because that's the thing, isn't it? When someone argues with you, are they really asking for your perspective? Are they genuinely curious about your viewpoint? Or are they just looking for a fight? Most arguments aren't requests for information. They're requests for conflict. And you get to decide whether to accept that request. That man at the dinner party was one of the most respected people in his field. He'd accomplished extraordinary things. And he did it by not wasting his energy on battles that didn't matter. He saved his words for conversations that deserved them. Some of you are worried that if you stop arguing, People will think they can walk all over you, that you'll become a pushover, that people won't respect you. But here's what actually happens. People respect you more because you're not reactive. You're not easily manipulated. You're not dancing to someone else's tune. There's a quiet confidence in someone who doesn't need to prove themselves in every conversation. The loudest person in the room is rarely the most powerful. The person who stays calm, who chooses their battles, who doesn't get pulled into every conflict, that person has real power. So where does this leave us? You now understand why arguing with fools is a losing game. It wastes your time, drains your energy, damages your well-being, and never achieves what you hope. You know that walking away isn't a weakness. It's wisdom. You have tools. You know how to identify people who aren't worth arguing with. You have exit phrases ready. You know to delay your responses. You know to redirect your energy. You know to protect your environment. And you understand that this is hard, that you'll still feel the urge to engage, that you'll sometimes fail. And that's okay. Progress, not perfection. Now, here's what I want you to do with this. Think about your life right now. Think about the ongoing arguments you're in, the people who keep baiting you, the topics that always lead to conflict, the energy you're spending on battles that don't matter. What if you just stopped? What if, starting today, you made a decision? I will not argue with people who don't want to understand. I will not waste my words on those who aren't really listening. I will save my energy for things that actually matter. Imagine how much lighter you'd feel. Imagine how much time you get back. Imagine how much peace you'd gain. That family member who always starts drama. You smile, nod, and change the subject. That coworker who argues about everything, you say interesting and get back to work. That stranger online saying something ridiculous. You scroll past without a second thought. You stop being controlled by other people's dysfunction. You stop letting fools rent space in your head. You stop giving your power away to anyone who wants to take it. This isn't about becoming passive. It's about becoming selective. Fighting every battle means losing the war for your time, your peace, your mental health, your life. The wisest people I've ever known share one thing in common. They know what's worth their energy and what isn't. They don't prove themselves to everyone. They don't defend every position. They don't engage every critic. They save their words for conversations that matter, and they let the rest go. You can be one of those people, starting right now. Starting with the very next person who tries to drag you into a pointless argument. Remember this, a fool wants your reaction, your attention, your energy. Don't give it to them. Walk away with your peace intact. That's how you win a battle you never should have fought in the first place.